Waking up to the presence of an ignoramus in the morning was akin to inhaling poison that would linger throughout my workday. Each sunrise brought with it the burden of enduring the condescension of an elite chief, a product of some lofty institution of higher learning. On a particular day, my tolerance reached its breaking point. "Perhaps you should escalate your grievances to our superiors," she taunted. "After all, I belong to the cream of society. Nobody will heed the complaints of a dropout like you." Her smugness was palpable, but a single encounter with the passing company president swiftly altered her demeanor. "Good day, I'm Daniel Smith," he introduced himself. "I landed a sales position at this company's branch straight out of high school. My father's motorcycle accident left him incapacitated, rendering him unable to provide for our family. So I opted to forgo college and joined the workforce to support them, thanks to a referral from my father." The camaraderie among the employees at this company made each workday a delight. My boss is kind, and my coworkers are a breeze to work with, so work-related stress rarely crosses my mind. Yet today, I can't shake off this feeling of melancholy. "Smith, isn't your meeting today with the head office?" a colleague inquired. "Yeah, it is." "Seriously, that means they'll be here, right? I should have taken the day off." "You don't interact with them directly, so just keep it to yourself." "I'm already feeling down this morning." Before my colleague could continue, they abruptly changed the topic. "Why was nobody at the entrance to greet me? I was expected, and this is how they welcome me," they grumbled. "Forget it, let's just get to work," they muttered, then hurried away. "Remember that backstabber?" a disgruntled voice, now left with me, seethed. "This place is full of ingrates. It's infuriating that I have to bend over backward just to communicate with them. I sincerely apologize. I didn't anticipate your early arrival." She's Manager Jones, frequently commuting from headquarters for meetings and such. With a degree from a prestigious university, she was recruited as a seasoned executive candidate. Unfortunately, her demeanor often veered into arrogance, belittling employees at the subsidiaries. "They're all just typical uneducated incompetents," she'd sneer, making me look like a fool. "Let's just get this over with. Could you kindly wait a bit longer for another key person to join us? They're en route." "What? You expect me to wait?" My role is to hit the ground running upon arrival from headquarters. This incompetence is beyond belief. I deeply apologize. You're here 20 minutes ahead of schedule, yet you're being unreasonable. I yearned to retort, but the person on the other end was from the head office, an elite recognized by headquarters. I hesitated, unsure of the repercussions if I dared to challenge her authority. We grumble amongst ourselves at the subsidiary, but when it comes down to it, we never confront them, always enduring silently. As I carried on with my usual routine, driving to work one morning, I noticed an elderly lady in distress crouched in the middle of the road. It was clearly an emergency, but those around me either avoided involvement or didn't know how to react, feigning ignorance as they passed her by. "Are you all right, ma'am?" I rushed to her side, but she couldn't respond. Her breathing was labored, and she struggled to speak. "I'm calling an ambulance right away," I announced, swiftly dialing 911. Once the ambulance arrived, we all accompanied the elderly lady to the hospital. "It's all right for you to head home," the nurse reassured us. "We'll take care of her until her family arrives." Having already informed the company of my tardiness and concern for the grandmother's well-being, I opted to stay until her family showed up. Thankfully, her condition wasn't critical, and she was discharged after a few days. We breathed a collective sigh of relief. Then, a few weeks later, out of the blue, I received a transfer order to the headquarters branch office, a directive straight from the president. Contemplating the move, a colleague offered their perspective. "It's a testament to your hard work being recognized. Embrace it and give it your all." Encouraged by their words, I resolved to accept the transfer. My first day at headquarters proved to be quite the whirlwind. Deciding to greet each department individually, I encountered the chief in the corridor and hastened to offer my greetings, but she caught sight of me and shot me a disdainful glance. "What brings you here? Aren't you a bit out of your element?" "Good morning, Chief. I've been reassigned here." "Oh, you're being relocated. What on earth are they thinking?" Disregarding my greeting, the chief launched into a tirade. "Starting my day by sharing airspace with an uneducated imbecile is a surefire way to ruin my entire workday. I apologize if I've inconvenienced you, Chief. Please spare me the pleasantries. Just steer clear of me. I'm busy. Don't get in my way." Clearly in a foul mood, the chief dismissed me with a wave of her hand, as if shooing away bothersome insects. It was evident that any further attempt at conversation would be futile, so I resigned myself to returning to my duties. As I returned to the floor where the chief was, I overheard her berating her subordinate. "You're incompetent. How can you mess up something so simple? Even a new recruit could handle this." "I apologize, colleague." The employee, visibly distraught over her mistake, clenched her fists, lowered her head, and endured the scolding. "If this is how it's going to be, I'd rather have someone else working for me than you. You're no longer of any use to me. Clear out your desk and get out of my sight." With those cutting words, she turned to face me, our eyes meeting. Already discontented, her expression soared further as she glared at me. "Didn't I tell you to stay away from me this morning? Please, Chief, hear me out. I have something to discuss with you today." "Enough. Everyone here is arrogant. I don't have time for incompetent fools like you." With those words, the chief stormed out of the room, slamming the door with all her might. Concerned, I approached the employee who had just faced the chief's wrath, wincing at the resounding crash of the door. "Is this typical of the chief's behavior?" I inquired. According to the employee, it wasn't just typical, it was a daily occurrence. "She's always disrespecting me," he lamented. Worried that the chief might overhear, he hushed me, cautioning, "Shh, she might hear you." Aware of the potential consequences if the chief caught wind of his complaints, I did my best to soothe his frustration. "I've endured this for too long," he confided, shuffling to his desk and retrieving a white envelope from a drawer. "Please don't tell me that's a resignation letter," I implored. "Unfortunately, that's exactly what it was," he confirmed, something he'd been contemplating for some time. "At my previous workplace, every day was serene and fulfilling. But ever since the chief arrived, it's turned into a nightmare," he lamented, tracing the surface of his desk with a heavy sigh. The clutter of documents and notes bespoke his dedication to his job, despite the upheaval. "I understand your frustration. It's disheartening to see your hard work undermined by just one person, the chief. I sympathize. You've poured your heart into this job, longer than she's been here, and you've excelled." But his frustration hung palpably in the air, with no outlet in sight. "The chief might say otherwise, but there are surely colleagues who trust and rely on you. Stay a bit longer for their sake. I'll help shoulder the burden. You're not the one who should walk away," I encouraged. "What do you mean?" he queried, his curiosity piqued as I made my way to confront the chief, leaving him pondering behind. "We can't allow any more employees to be mistreated like him. That's why I'm here," I declared, trailing after the chief until I found her in the break room, sipping tea. "Mind if I join you?" I inquired. The chief glanced up, her expression pained. "You're still here? You're as persistent as a fly." "I'm just trying to take a break. Please give me some space," she sighed wearily, likely drained from the recent confrontation. Summoning my courage, I addressed her firmly. "Chief, I'll be conducting a thorough investigation into your treatment of our employees. Depending on the findings, appropriate actions will be taken." My direct statement caught the chief off guard. "What are you implying? Are you trying to play the hero to shield incompetence?" "No, that's not my intention. Why don't you go run to your superiors with this? I'm an elite, you know. I have the backing of those above. Nobody will pay heed to a dropout like you from the subsidiary," she retorted dismissively, waving her hand as if to brush off the matter. Suddenly, a man emerged from the other side. "Smith, there you are. How's everything going?" It was the president. "I'm doing my best, thanks to your support." "Ah, hello, Mr. President. What a pleasant surprise to see you here. What happened to the grumpy chief from earlier? She's putting on a facade of excellence for those higher up the chain. I'm glad to hear you're thriving. Have you connected with the new branch manager?" "Huh? What new branch manager?" The chief looked puzzled, her gaze unfocused. "He's standing right in front of you. Hadn't you been briefed?" The president chuckled. "This inept employee from a subsidiary company. You're quite the comedian, boss," the chief scoffed, joining in the laughter. The president, however, regarded her with suspicion. "What are you talking about? Are you suggesting I'm joking? Understand this. He's now the brand manager of this branch office. It's impolite to label him incompetent," the president admonished. "What on earth?" The chief shot me a scowl. "You didn't bother to inform me earlier, did you?" "I've already informed the rest of the department." "Oh dear, such a rude and ill-informed individual." The chief's face flushed with anger, and she looked on the verge of collapse. Observing the situation with reluctance, the president finally spoke up. Let me shed some light on this remarkable opportunity. This company belonged to his father. Due to a car accident injury, his father couldn't manage it, so I took over. Is he the former president's son? The chief inquired. That's correct. I've been urging him to relocate to headquarters, but he's quite adamant about staying put, the president explained. I apologize. I have a fondness for that place, and I found it satisfying, I replied. What prompted your unexpected arrival here? Why did you just continue at the subsidiary? The chief interjected, momentarily forgetting the president's presence as she directed her query at me. The president, accustomed to seeing the chief in a more composed state, was visibly taken aback, his eyes widening in surprise. I made a heartfelt plea to him. He's my mother's savior, her benefactor, I clarified. What about the president's mother? The chief pressed further. Yes, the elderly lady I rescued a few weeks ago happened to be the president's mother. When he arrived at the hospital entrance and found me waiting for her family, I was surprised. I later learned that he was the one who had immediately come to her aid, calling for an ambulance while others ignored her. I felt he deserved better than being relegated to a subsidiary. So, you personally appointed him as branch manager, the president confirmed. That's correct, he nodded. I had my doubts about my qualifications when I was first appointed as branch manager, I admitted. Coming from a subsidiary, it was a sudden shift to leading at the head office. But after hearing from the president and receiving a call from my father urging me to support the company he had built, I made up my mind. That's precisely why I've appointed him as branch manager. Moving forward, I expect you to show him the respect he deserves and heed his directives, the president admonished the chief sternly before exiting the room. That's the explanation, chief, I reiterated as I faced her once more. You've been mistreating not only your subordinates but also those under your direct supervision. I understand the frustration and pain of being belittled simply because of lacking formal education. No. The chief collapsed into her chair, tears streaming down her face as her pride took a severe blow. It was no small shock for her to suddenly find herself outranked by someone she had long looked down upon for their perceived lack of education. She even threatened to have me dismissed. With that, my ordeal came to an end. The following day, a comprehensive investigation into the chief's conduct was conducted. Numerous employees and subordinates came forward with accounts of her egregious behavior. As a result, disciplinary action was taken. Upon receiving the news, the chief left the company without a word, her spirits seemingly drained. The chief appeared visibly distraught. Considering her high self-esteem, it was understandable. By the way, are you certain you want me to replace the chief? I inquired. I have full confidence in you, the president affirmed. With the chief dismissed, he appointed the individual who had previously endured her wrath. This employee had a long tenure with the company and showed unwavering dedication to their work. Naturally, I had thoroughly vetted his past performance, knowing he had first-hand experience of the frustrations and mistreatment under former Chief Jones. I knew he wouldn't repeat the same mistakes and would prove to be a compassionate leader who understands his employees' feelings, I explained. As for myself, I endeavored to approach my role from the perspective of the employees, not solely as a branch manager. Drawing from my positive experiences with a subsidiary I had previously worked with, I conducted regular interviews with staff, seeking their input. I also organized training sessions for employees in leadership roles, striving to foster a more supportive environment. Through these efforts, the company's culture gradually improved, resembling the positive atmosphere of the subsidiary where I began my career. Will Smith, I apologize for what happened with Jones, but thanks to your efforts, this company is thriving, the president acknowledged. Oh, I'm apprehensive, I admitted. At a later meeting, I found myself summoned to the president's office for a casual coffee chat. He wanted to discuss the recent developments in the workplace. I'm not getting any younger, eventually. I envision Will stepping into my role, the president shared. With all respect, Mr. President, I don't see myself as presidential material, I responded. Why not? Your father would have wanted the same, he countered. I aspire to remain aligned with the employees, working alongside them to support the company and engage with our customers. Once in the president's seat, that connection may become strained, I explained. The president frowned at my words before abruptly excusing himself. You have a unique sense of humor. Most would leap at the opportunity, he remarked upon his departure. Am I considered eccentric? I wondered aloud. No, it's refreshing. It's exactly the kind of mindset we need in a smith, he assured, giving my shoulder a firm tap. You have a meeting coming up, don't you? Get back to work.
The construction of our new home started. My husband unfortunately lost his job. He had agreed to contribute half of the mortgage, even considering taking on part-time work, but ultimately did not follow through with finding employment. Upon the completion of our new house, my husband proposed something quite daring. I've chosen to gift this house to my lovely niece as a wedding present. If you disagree with my idea, we can simply purchase another house. We should end our marriage right away. Surprised by his secret, I quickly agreed to divorce if that's what he wanted. John grinned, believing he had succeeded. After swiftly filing for divorce, he inquired about the division of property, which caused a noticeable shift in his attitude once I revealed that I knew his secret. With the help of another person, his original plan veered off course, resulting in a remarkable turn of events. We had been married for 3 years. Next year, I will be celebrating my 30th birthday, and my husband, who is in his mid-30s, talked about the possibility of having children. Given the physical demands of childbirth and the unpredictability of our current health, I decided to have children before reaching my mid-30s and discussed it with my husband. He recommended taking time before starting a family. If it felt overwhelming, he mentioned wanting children, but recognized that our current home was too small for a family, suggesting we think about purchasing a house. Raising children involves significant financial commitments, and purchasing a home may entail almost 3 decades of mortgage payments. By that time, my husband will probably be in his mid-60s and retired. I wanted to avoid placing any financial strain on our children. My mother balanced a full-time job with raising me, taking care of the house, and supporting my father until she retired. I always looked up to her and chose to balance work with taking care of the home. With determination, we meticulously planned for our home, selecting a builder and initiating our new home project. Luckily, we had some savings, so we opted to increase our down payment to prevent any potential mortgage difficulties down the road. Right when everything seemed to be falling into place, my husband's company went bankrupt, leaving him without a job or any severance pay. I asked him if there were any signs of the company's impending failure, but he snapped back, saying he couldn't have known since he wasn't an executive. One morning, he found himself unable to enter his workplace due to a notice announcing the company's bankruptcy the day before. It was a small company, and it appeared that the president and other responsible parties had disappeared overnight, without even leaving that month's salary. Considering the uncertain future, I proposed that we think about buying the house, but my husband was adamant about moving forward since we had already made significant progress. Because of his strong motivation to secure a new job quickly, I decided to pause the plan. He was hopeful about swiftly securing a new job. We chose to proceed with our plan after he landed a new job. He began frequenting the job center and eagerly looking for jobs online. My spouse also secured some temporary employment while searching for a permanent job, but it was on a call basis and unpredictable. His willingness to share the mortgage payments and dedication to doing so eased my mind, especially since my income was steady and we could handle things without his help for now. I've made the decision to proceed with our home project. So far, my husband may appear dedicated and responsible, but he has a peculiar obsession with his niece, the daughter of his much older sister. She became a mother at a young age, and my husband, who became an uncle early on, showered his niece with love and attention. Even though they lived far apart, during occasional visits, he would generously send expensive gifts and give her money that exceeded expectations. On one occasion, he even surprised her with a Christmas present of $1,000, which I thought was too much. When unexpected expenses arose, he chose to prioritize gifts for his niece over our budget, causing me to question his priorities. His kindness toward his niece often left me dismayed. Currently without a job, he didn't use our savings for his niece, but spent extended periods outside, supposedly looking for work, coming back home later than when he had a job. Although his enthusiasm to secure a job was admirable, he started to neglect our home project, leaving all decisions to me. He requested that I take care of all the paperwork, with the intention of having only his name on the joint ownership. I kindly prompted him to take an interest in our home, and he reacted with frustration, mentioning his exhaustion from searching for a job. I was concerned that he might later claim that because I made all the decisions, I should be accountable for the mortgage payments. When discussing payment arrangements, he preferred to maintain his personal savings until securing a job, focusing on future emergencies rather than immediate needs. He strongly suggested that I take over the mortgage payments for now, which seemed much more convenient for him than our original agreement. I asked him to sign a loan agreement for the duration I would be covering the mortgage, wanting to establish my position. He kept expressing his concerns, but eventually agreed when he understood that pushing him about his job search could cause problems. John has promised to reimburse me for half of the mortgage payments I covered while he was unemployed once he finds a new job. I managed to obtain his signature on the agreement and kept it safe in a place where he wouldn't stumble upon it. However, there were several occasions when the commitments we first made unraveled before our new home was finished. First, John, who had mentioned he would secure a job swiftly and wouldn't be selective, struggled to find employment as the completion of our new home neared. In addition, he turned down multiple offers from the temp agency he signed up with, providing different reasons. Hated the idea of supporting a husband who made no effort, so I pressed him to find a job many times, but he always dodged the issue, leading to more arguments. During this time, our new home was finished and prepared for us to move in. However, given the circumstances, the idea of moving in with John appeared challenging. Actually, I had collected different pieces of information since he lost his job, such as his ongoing struggle to secure employment. I have several things I'd like to confirm and discuss. When John was heading to the job center, I went up to him as usual. "Would you like to spend today with me?" I mentioned to him that there was something important I wanted to discuss. John attempted to steer the conversation away, emphasizing that securing a job was his main focus. He suggested discussing it later, pointing out that skipping a day at the job center wouldn't make a difference, especially since it was uncertain if he had any interviews lined up. I stood my ground, insisting that he pay attention to me. John made a bold statement. "A nagging woman isn't cute. You know what? Hey, I have something to share with you as well." I thought I could be patient, but since it's positive news, now is the perfect moment. My niece is getting married, and I've chosen to gift her the new home. We can divide the mortgage and continue making payments jointly. I was surprised by his generous gestures towards his niece in the past, but giving her a whole house, why did he decide on something so important without talking to me beforehand? This was the first time I heard about his niece's upcoming wedding. I haven't consented to this. Is this a decision you can make independently? Inquired further. After that, John threatened divorce if I disagreed. He mentioned the idea of constructing a new home, but there has been no progress so far. He was unable to find a job. However, he continued to make vague commitments about securing employment. Although his words seemed believable, his behavior did not align. I chuckled in amazement at his words, as I had already expected his outlandish idea of giving a whole house to his niece. That matter must be related, right? I was curious to see his reaction, so I asked him a lot of questions. "Are you kidding? Currently, I am not employed. You're generously giving your niece a house that still has a mortgage on it. Do you think she'd be pleased with that? How could someone think of giving away a house that we're still paying a 30-year mortgage on?" Furthermore, presenting a house with an outstanding mortgage as a gift for a celebration appears to be transferring a significant financial responsibility, which is quite shocking. I'd also inquired about what this meant for our plans to start a family, considering we bought the house for when our family expands. John confidently replied to my questions, stating he wouldn't be affected by a divorce. He'd avoided answering my questions and only mentioned the possibility of divorce without providing any explanation. It felt like we were from different worlds, making conversation nearly impossible. There were several topics I had planned to talk about, but it turned out that John was more difficult than I had expected. I was considering discussing divorce, so I quickly agreed to his suggestion.
If you agree to my terms, including leaving the house and finalizing our divorce, I will listen to anything, John said. You can go ahead and file the divorce papers first, but I prefer to settle the division of property after the divorce is officially finalized. I also want to get ready for living on my own, so let's sort everything out once you calm down, I told him. John was amenable, stating he would adhere to my requests as long as he could initiate divorce proceedings right away. Actually, my intention to get ready for living alone was just an excuse. I have one more thing to take care of. I informed John that I required some time to get ready for living by myself as a tactic to delay without him catching on. After some time, I finished all my pending tasks and was just waiting for the perfect time to reach out to John. Then, maybe feeling a bit antsy or stumbling upon something, he reached out to me initially. How can I help you today? Why is our new home being listed for sale? That was meant to be a present for my niece, and it's something we both own anyway. He was upset over the phone, accusing me of selling our jointly owned home without his knowledge and refusing to listen to anything I had to say. After allowing him to express his feelings, I replied, I was aware that you were attempting to shift all the payments onto me. Did you actually believe it was still jointly owned? You seemed very eager to get a divorce. I assumed you would have double-checked that detail. When you requested joint ownership, it was arranged accordingly. But I decided to change the ownership because I was concerned that he would avoid payments and try to claim the house as his own. After the house was completed, he began acting strangely, believing he could keep his true intentions hidden. He adamantly claimed the house was for his niece, convinced that no one suspected him. I managed to pay off the entire mortgage using my savings. Little did John know, my parents had sold the land inherited from my grandfather to provide cash for a payment. My parents always preferred purchasing things outright instead of taking out loans, which they considered to be uncertain and risky. They helped me out financially so I could purchase the house outright. I had thought about taking their advice, but then John lost his job. Worried that his behavior might worsen if he found out about the money, I chose to stay quiet. Furthermore, I questioned whether he would reimburse me if I paid for everything. I refrained from informing him to avoid overshadowing my parents' kindness. John was very upset when he found out about the ownership change and blamed me for not keeping our promise about the house. Is the house still standing? Is it still intact and suitable for living? Don't worry about it if it ends up in someone else's hands. If you truly desire it, you have the option to repurchase it. I believe I had the freedom to make decisions about the house I owned outright, but residing in a home designed by an ex-spouse didn't sit well with me. John, feeling upset by my statement, asserted his entitlement to a portion of the proceeds as marital property. He requested a prompt share, ensuring to verify the exact amount later. I asked him to meet up, mentioning that I had more information to share. Arriving early at the agreed-upon location, I waited for him. When John arrived and started talking, I revealed something that caused him to stop speaking abruptly, the findings of a private investigator's investigation into his behavior. The report contained evidence of his extramarital relationship, featuring prominent photos of him kissing another woman in public, dining out at upscale restaurants, and entering hotels. It was mentioned that even though John had initially searched for a job after losing his job, he eventually started meeting the other women frequently, stating that he was single and having difficulty finding work because of the recession, which made her feel sympathetic towards him. He appealed to her sympathy and persuaded her of his financial struggles, which ultimately led her to provide him with financial assistance, behaving in a way similar to a con artist proposing marriage. I felt unwell upon discovering that he had intensified divorce discussions due to his frustration with various issues, such as the mortgage and his lack of empathy. The other woman was more accommodating and understanding, making it easier for him to control her compared to me, intending to replace me with her. The tale of giving the house was simply a strategy to speed up our divorce, an excuse he believed he could use if I declined. However, he was incorrect in believing he had influenced me. Actually, I was the one behind it all. I decided to hire a private investigator after noticing John's unusual actions and learning about his unfaithfulness. His reason for giving the house to his niece caught me off guard, but I had already made up my mind to divorce him when I found out about his affair. I wanted to chat about this issue with John before we settled into our new place. At first, I intended to talk to him about his unfaithfulness and let him know that I wanted a divorce. Despite his irrational behavior, I noticed he was unable to engage in a reasonable conversation. I chose to let him believe he was in control while I strategized my next moves behind the scenes. I confronted John with all the evidence I had gathered. "I have concrete proof of your affair. Given all this evidence, it's impossible to argue your way out of it. I will be seeking compensation from you. You were aware but chose not to speak up. What sort of person does that make you, choosing to remain quiet about your spouse's unfaithfulness? Hey there, was it you who betrayed me?" John's assertion of being a cherished husband was quite ridiculous, prompting me to scoff in response. He tripped over his words before reiterating his claim to a portion of the assets. That's when I decided to reach out to John's father as a final option. I let him know that John was requesting a division of assets. John began passionately explaining why I should include his father. But when I mentioned his father wanted to talk to him, he stopped abruptly. I handed the phone to John on speaker so he could hear his father reprimanding him. His father reprimanded him for his behavior, questioning how a man in his 30s could act so shamefully, and criticizing him for causing family breakdown while still demanding a share of assets. John has always had a challenging relationship with his father, finding it difficult to stand up to him since he was young. His father strongly dislikes dishonesty, especially when it involves hurting or deceiving others. After John proposed to divorce, I quickly reached out to John's father for advice, seeking assistance if I couldn't resolve it on my own. He encouraged me to leave my cheating husband and assured me he would talk to John. However, I had many things I wanted to say to John myself. Fearing he might run away if his father intervened, I chose not to speak. I wanted time after our divorce to coordinate with John's father and make sure John didn't find out about the house sale. Additionally, I wanted to clarify John's relationship with his niece and decided to call John's sister while John's father was present. I directly inquired whether her daughter had ever received expensive gifts or large sums of money from John, and she answered in the negative. John's sister noted that whenever John was invited to birthday parties, he always showed up without bringing any gifts, just inexpensive cars. My niece was completely unaware of the supposed marriage or the house gift, and she found it ridiculous and unwelcome. John's father and John's sister were also unaware of John's supposed affection for his niece. Where did all the money John said he spent on his niece disappear? John's sister proceeded to share important details about John's history. At the age of 20, he was detained during a police raid at an illegal casino. Confronted by his father's disapproval, John begged his mother to keep it between them, confessing to trading valuable items for money. Despite his pledge to stop, his addiction appeared to be pathological. John's father noticed some missing items from their storage and decided to address John's gambling habits while expressing concern for his niece. "Are you using your niece as a cover for your gambling? Despite being unemployed, you still engage in gambling." He instructed John to return home for a serious re-education, emphasizing that the asset division is not intended for funding bets. John reluctantly agreed to his father's terms, giving up any rights to assets and agreeing to provide compensation. Thanks to John's father's help, a lawyer he connected me with verified that John had given up his rights to any shared property, enabling me to obtain all communal assets. Moreover, thanks to John's father's thoughtfulness, I was given a lump sum inconvenience fee from John, which was well above the standard rate. Initially, I felt anger towards John's affair partner. However, as the investigation into John's behavior extended to her, my feelings shifted. She thought John was not in a relationship and facing financial difficulties, so she offered him financial assistance despite her own money troubles. I realized she was also being manipulated by John. Even though she was tricked, she showed regret for the possible impact on my family and tearfully said sorry. She kindly offered a small sum of money as compensation, which I declined, grateful for her sentiment. I let her know that, as another victim of John's deceit, she might be eligible for some compensation, clarifying that when someone promises marriage while also making financial demands, it could be considered fraudulent. She promptly acted on this advice. During the confrontation at John's parents' house, when she accused him of using marriage as bait, John's father became furious. He recommended that she file a police report and insisted that John surrender himself right away, which created quite a stir. John humbly asked for forgiveness from his affair partner and his father, promising to return all the money he had swindled to prevent police intervention. His limited savings were entirely used up in repaying his affair partner and handling the damages, leaving him with no money. After retiring, John's father had ample time to keep a close eye on John, enforcing strict supervision that made a prison seem lenient. John's efforts to evade the surveillance were brief. He returned to his father's doorstep within 2 days due to hunger. John's father was upset by John's indecisiveness about staying or leaving, leading him to disown John and express his disappointment. Now that the house is sold and I have the proceeds, I'm looking forward to investing in some personal rejuvenation. I secured a top-floor apartment in a building I've always dreamed of living in. I look forward to savoring the view, indulging in delicious food, and cherishing the time away from John, recognizing the years spent together. Hi, my name is Bella. My husband and I have been married for 2 years. I had a terrible time finding love until I was 27 years old. I went to an elite middle and high school for girls only, and then I went to a university for women only. After I graduated, I got a job as a receptionist at a big company. As you might expect, all of my coworkers were women. For most of the people in my social circle, business leaders would ask them to parties, but not me. I never went to those kinds of events. It was easy to understand why talking to guys made me so nervous that I couldn't even speak. People often told me how nice I looked, and I was asked out a few times. There were some nice guys at dinner, but they always told me, "You're pretty, but there's not much else to you." After that, it happened. The door to my fate opened. Can I ask Bella to go on a date with me? This is what Lex, who worked for one of our clients and always checked in at my desk, told me. Since he would only give me his contact information, people around us thought we were dating, but it wasn't true. I just smiled at him when he tried to start a conversation, like I did with everyone else. I really thought I would always be single, but when he told me, everything changed. May I suggest that we begin our relationship as friends? That was my answer. Got off guard. He nodded so excitedly that it looked like his head would fall off. He smiled as he walked into the office. I had never done that before. Guy questions like, "Want to have dinner?" had always been the norm up until now. Free tonight. But when I was with Lex, I didn't get that sense. I only felt love. I was so happy. I went on a few dates with him, but I was still nervous and didn't talk much. The moment I knew he liked me for who I was, I knew. Is it possible for you and I to be together? To the point of tears, he was so happy. All of this took place on Christmas 2 years ago. At that moment, I was very happy and thought I would always have someone so loving in my life. But there was a hole in his armor when his business failed. Now it's been 2 years, and I'm 29. "Lex, you should probably wake up now," I told my husband, who was still asleep. Then I put on my shoes and left the house. I'm the only one making money for our family right now. My husband's business went out of business 6 months ago, and he hasn't had a job since. It's been hard for him to find a job. This business is in a bad field, and the economy is also bad. Sometimes he gets an offer for a job that pays only $2,000 a month, which makes it hard for him to commit to a new job. Even with all of this, I still support him. Our love isn't so shallow that it would fade if one of us lost our job. My pay has always been pretty low. We've never lived a fancy life. We rent a 2-bedroom flat that is more than 30 years old. It's a 30-minute walk from the train stop, and the building isn't safe. But I was ready to give up a lot of things so that we could keep living together. I thought my husband might still be upset about his company going out of business. He had a few job offers, and I waited calmly because I thought he'd find a good fit and feel better. But my hope was short-lived, and he kept getting worse. Even taking out his anger on me by raising his hand sometimes was a sign of his stress. He didn't leave any permanent marks, and I thought he must be hurting more than I was. So I put up with it because I wanted to help. Then, after a few days, he finally got a new job. He quit the business he was in before and went into a whole new one. He took the job because the new place was ready to hire him, even though he didn't have much experience. I felt better when he got it because I knew I wouldn't have to be his hitting bag anymore. I thought he might be getting violent, but it looked like it was just a phase. He is now working hard at his new job and was even given the title of team leader. It's been a year, and I just turned 30. I was excited about having kids soon, but the loving man I married didn't seem to be there anymore. I told you I liked toast. Now tell me why you made pancakes. Also, take out the pit if you're going to serve fruit. Little things started to make my husband mad, and he started saying mean things. Really, do you need to talk that way? Lex, you're an adult now. I snapped back. Take out the pit yourself. I was getting angry. In response, he hit the wall with his hand, which scared me. I don't like to argue, but I know in my heart that what he's doing is mental abuse. Recently, I've tried not to upset him, but we've been fighting a lot, and I'm tired of it. When he took it out on me, that's when I lost it. It looked like the stress of his new job was to blame. Soon after, he was made team leader, which showed how good he was. Now everyone tells him he's going to be a department head very soon. He couldn't handle the extra stress, so he started hitting me, who was an easy target. In fact, I quit my job at 30 to stay at home and raise my kids. When I got into my 30s, I'd always planned to quit my job as a receptionist and do something I really enjoyed. Since my husband knew this, I stopped at age 30 as planned. He doesn't seem to like it though. Women need to work too these days. You should know that my pay is enough to take care of both of us. Do you even value the people who have taken care of you? He moans while he eats, then gets his bag and goes to work. I was there for him when he didn't have a job. So why am I being blamed now? That's when I started to mentally distance myself from him. When I got home one day, there were shoes I didn't recognize at the door. There was my mother-in-law in the living room, which caught me off guard. "Whoa, Mom, why are you here?" My mom told me straight out, "Didn't Lex tell you?" When I went up to her, "From today on, I'm moving in. This is something I've never heard before." Over time, I learned that my husband had suggested that my mother-in-law move, and because she was lonely after the death of my father-in-law. Of course, no one asked me that. While I was still shocked, my mother-in-law told me to start making dinner. It shows how valuable a housewife is to take care of her family, so she told her, "Get to work." Even though I was angry and confused, I went to the kitchen to make dinner. Then Lex's mother-in-law came in and said, "Lex hates burgers." The food was almost ready. This is rubbish. The dish was almost done when she threw it away. I was seated. Inside, but strangely, words failed me when I was faced with this surprise event. I couldn't say anything, so I just listened as my mother-in-law went on. She then started going through the fridge and cooking without asking. I finally calmed down and told my mom, "Hold on." I made a list of meals for the week and then went shopping. As soon as I said that, he dumped flour on my head, making me cough. I kept watching her make her food, and then she told me to clean up. When my husband finally got home, he was thrilled to see the meal. Yes, this is the kind of food I want. It's better to eat fried food than salad. He walked past me and happily sat down to eat with his mom. My heart felt like it had been smashed and black ink had been dropped on it at that moment. Following that, my mother-in-law continued to bother me every day, and my husband continued to hurt my feelings. I felt like I didn't belong in this house, and even though my husband wanted to be close to me, I couldn't because of the situation. As a 30-something woman, I have been putting off having a child because I don't want to have a kid with this abusive man. The last straw finally broke. My wife's mom asked me to take her to the hospital because she was sick. Even though I didn't want to be with her, I had to take her to the hospital, even though I didn't want to. But when I went to get her, a social worker told me to go to a different room. She told her, "You must be having a hard time taking care of the kids and doing all the housework by yourself. But taking it out on your husband and mother-in-law isn't good." It turns out that my mother-in-law was saying that I hurt her when I fell. Even worse, she had been to the hospital more than once and asked about me each time. It looks like she picked today to deal the last hit. The social worker blamed me because she didn't know the whole story. You should look out for kids and old people more. During that time, our family hasn't had any children. When I was told I might need psychological help, I had had enough. You broke my rights, so I'll sue you. It's not you who is being mistreated here, it's me. I showed proof that my husband abused me and that my mother-in-law burned me on purpose. The social worker said she had to check with my mother-in-law, but I told her no and left the hospital by myself. Soon after, my husband and mother-in-law came home. My husband heard from my mother-in-law that I was mean to her. My husband shook his head and said, "You're leaving me, you parasite. How dare you leave my mother? What kind of lie did my mother-in-law tell you?" Based on her fake tears, I think she did it again. I was sick of telling her she was wrong, so I left the house without noticing either of them. I didn't go home that day. Instead, I stayed the night in a work hotel. I was lucky to have my wallet and cell phone with me, and it was easy to find a charger. I chose to avoid both of them for a while and not go back home. But as I walked by the house one day, I saw a woman in her 50s who lived across the street from our apartment. I was beginning to worry. "I haven't seen you around." She also told me that your mom told her that you and your husband are going on vacation for about a week. When I heard that, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Then I asked myself, if not now, when? I called the moving company right away and asked them to help me move out as soon as possible. It was a little more expensive, but I didn't have much stuff, and the movers were able to get it all to my parents' house in just 3 days. Let's see how my husband and his mother react, since they have no idea how much I've helped with the house. They put me down when they don't know anything about me, and I won't forgive them. After moving, I went back to my parents' house because their house was empty. After a few days, my husband called me. "Where are you, Bella? There is no one in your room." When my husband found out what was going on, he kept asking me where I was. I told him, "Not your business. By the way, I've already filed for divorce because you've said you wanted to do it before. Sign them and send them in." After I hung up the phone with him, I stopped calling his number. After that, my life became peaceful. I did yoga, made breakfast, and then sat down with my parents at the table. I had lunch with my mom and dinner with my family again. That's how I felt, but it was comfort and happiness I hadn't felt in a long time. When I told my parents to thank you, they were surprised, but they were happy to see me. When my husband found out I was at my parents' house, he waited nearby for me. When I saw him, I tried to run away, but he caught up and grabbed my arm. "Call me Bella. Let's go home. Without you, the house is a mess." I yelled, "Help me," as his hold got tighter. As I was being helped, a high school boy in his sports uniform came by and called the cops. A businessman nearby also helped. Since the cops were there, my husband quietly left. But as expected, my angry mother-in-law stormed into my parents' house. "How dare you make fun of my son in public? Oh, you and your family are a shame. Finally, I stopped my dad from going up to them and told him, while I was doing that, my mother-in-law was outside our house making threats and even talking about defamation lawsuits. Dad was about to lose it and talk to her about it, but I stopped him. Okay, I'm ready to settle this. I called my husband, who was standing next to my mother-in-law when the call came in. He told her straight out, I know you're cheating, and I have proof. I'm going to sue you for abuse and get money when we get divorced. My husband became scared when he heard this. After hearing rumors that he was going to a hotel with a coworker, I actually paid a detective to find proof of his cheating. I had a lot of proof. I even went to the hospital and got a note saying I was healthy in case they tried something. I had also recorded talks in case I needed proof. I was going to talk to my husband and his mother about it when I was ready mentally. But I'm not going to be quiet when they insult my parents. My mother-in-law has also been stealing money from my pocket. I've heard that the house is in terrible shape and even smells bad since I left. People in the neighborhood are complaining, right? My husband didn't know what to say. A friend told me this story. They said my husband and his mother were not in town. It looks like they haven't been doing simple things like picking through the trash, and the house has become a dump. Besides that, I heard that the property management gets reports every day about the loud fights they have. Now my husband might understand how much I helped the family and want me to return, but it's too late. I'm not coming back to live happily ever after with your mom. After I said that, I put the phone down. Soon after, my wife's mom tried to break down my front door. They were both arrested after I called the cops. After the fact, my neighbor told me that they hadn't taken care of any of the complaints through the management business. The drama finally got so bad that it cleared out the whole apartment building. The management finally went to court against both of them for not paying rent, ignoring complaints, and making business difficult. They were being sued for money damages. They were finally told by the court to leave and pay money for harm. They can't rent anywhere now because they're on a list of people who can't rent. It turned out that the rent wasn't paid because my husband made a mistake at work that cost a lot of money and caused him to lose his job. He quit his job and moved far away because he couldn't find another place to live in the area. He then ran into another problem when he tried to find new work. He became homeless, which made his mother steal from stores. She was arrested for hitting a store worker who tried to talk to her. I read about this in the news online. I have no idea what comes next, and I don't want to know. When I got divorced, I started working at the coffee shop of my dreams. Someone I work with who is 5 years younger than me and I became friends. I got married again when I was 34. We opened our dream cafe when we were 40, and now I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant at a late age,